right, 3 reasons I believe Matt Rhule didn't definitively say anything yesterday, one way or the other. Over the top complimentary, said very nice things, said all the right things. And it all falls under the umbrella of leverage. Leverage. Right now, the Penn State job being open is great for Matt Rhule, regardless of what he intends to do. Stay, go, whether he gets an offer or not. Whatever Penn State's intentions are when it comes to their head coaching position and whether it does or does not connect to Matt Rhule. Leverage. Leverage. Opportunities to have leverage, I don't mean this in a negative sense. It can be a good thing. If leveraged is, bad pun intended, leveraged properly. It can be a good thing. It's good for Matt Rhule. It's also good for Nebraska because all of a sudden now there's a whole bunch of Penn State recruits that are coming to Lincoln, Nebraska. The number 1 running back in the entire country in the 2027 class, a wide receiver. There's a whole bunch of guys that are now available. Hey, their problem is our blessing. We'll take it. Also, Nebraska's being talked about more on the national stage a little bit. And dude, you made a phenomenal point. When we go to Happy Valley in mid-November, of course, we'll have more information maybe by then. This may not fully come to fruition what's going to happen until December. But man, like if we're sitting here the way it is right now in mid-November when we go play at Penn State, I don't care what their record is. That needs to be the primetime game on Saturday night. I'm just saying. I don't care. All right. So under the umbrella of leverage, there's 3 things. Number 1, NIL. Well, not even NIL, but you go back to something he said yesterday. And again, I had more time to process. It was in the moment I was kind of reacting yesterday. If you couldn't tell, I was struggling for words because I was a little bit surprised he didn't just come down and shoot it, come out and shoot it down. Now, my understanding is he had a team meeting and he did so with the team. Again, I was not in the team meeting, so it's secondhand information. Matt Rhule's press conference, here are some of the things that stood out a little bit. He was asked about what Nebraska needs to do to enhance its ability to be competitive in college football. Here's the quote. We have to be unabashed, Rhule said. We can't always worry about the optics of everything. It's a really hard time in higher education. There's cuts, but athletics is a separate entity. We're not taking money from the university. In a world of $30 and $40 million rosters, I'm going to pause for a sec. He's talked in the past. Now, it's not exactly the same as when he first said this a year or maybe 18 months ago. Hey, if you got a $5 million roster, you're trying to compete with Ohio State, who's got a $20 million roster, who then went on to win a national title last year. That's hard. So these are things he's mentioned privately and publicly before. In a world of $30 and $40 million rosters, which isn't going away, I'd like us to do the same thing. I'm pausing for effect. I'd like us to do the same thing. And there's a sort of like, hey, that's not really the Nebraska way, and I'd like it to be. I'd like to be at the front of everything. So I don't know if I should phrase it NIL, because now there's revenue sharing, there's contracts that are already here and coming. Like putting, if you want to compete with $20, $30 million rosters, having a $20, $30 million roster. And I know we've got passionate boosters, not my money, but those passionate boosters have some money. And it's easy for me to sit here and just say, pound the table, hey, give us money. You know, that's easy. What he's saying is I'd really like that. So leverage. That's what I'd like here. I believe that's what he was saying amongst all the complimentary stuff he said yesterday. Number 1, being able to have a roster that's monetarily on a similar level as those that we are trying to compete with across the Big Ten in the country and other rosters we're trying to beat. Number 2, it could be contract related. I mean, Troy Dannon wants to squash this. You give him an extension, you do whatever. The risky run is what happened to Franklin. I mean, they got to pay him $50 million to go away at Penn State. $50 million to not coach here. He's a good football coach, by the way. Just think about that. Think about Napier at Florida. They just had a big win over Texas. Texas goes and mollywops Oklahoma. Florida's still not having a great run. They have to pay him a lot of money too. So you got to factor that in, but it could be contract related. It could be an extension or more money. I don't think that's really, I think Matt Rhule's hit a point where he's like, that's not my driving force. He said yesterday, he goes, I'm not a cyborg. Like, in other words, there's human being elements that I think matter more to him, but I'm just saying it's a possibility. It's a possibility. I didn't list it first because I don't think it's at the top of his list. The third reason is maybe he goes to Penn State. Maybe he didn't shoot it down because maybe he goes to Penn State. I mean, those are options. It could be contract related. It could be going to Penn State. Eventually, he doesn't want to shut the door. Maybe he just wants to be respectful. He's really good friends with the AD there. They work together at Temple. Maybe he just wants to be respectful. Maybe he considers it disrespectful to shoot a job down right away. If we're being honest, sometimes it's just nice to be wanted and appreciated. I can't help but wonder if maybe he feels more wanted and appreciated in the past 48 hours than he has a few months. Not that he doesn't feel, loved and things of that nature at certain points from Husker fans, but it can be tough at times. It can be tough. There's a lot of scrutinization. I said yesterday, probably Texas, Alabama, Ohio State, Nebraska. There's other ones I'm not going to think of right now. With a level of scrutiny, like Georgia probably is getting to that level, like Nebraska's up there. So there's probably been times when he didn't feel appreciated. Maybe sometimes it's just nice to feel appreciated like a normal human being. It was pointed out to me, he seemed a little bit frustrated with maybe how things went down at Penn State with James Franklin. Now, he didn't come out and say that, but if you just kind of read between the lines, and that's what we're doing a little bit here, maybe that's part of it. That all falls under the umbrella of leverage, and leverage can be a good thing if leverage is leveraged properly and in a positive manner. My gut tells me it's about, I want to have the opportunity, if we're going to be on the same level or expected to be on the same level or competing with schools like Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Bama, Texas. There's a lot of resources here. Nebraska's not short for resources, but if you want to be on that same level, talking about $30, $40 million rosters, I felt like that was something that was put in there if you kind of went back and listened to the press conference and paid attention to certain things, I felt like that was put in there for a reason. And if he comes out and he comments and says something definitively, might lose that leverage, to be honest with you. Jake, does that make sense? What are your thoughts? And how bad do the comments hate me right now in reacting to the show?
I would say there's any hate here. But yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying does make sense. I think all of those certainly could be part of why he was saying that. But again, I go back to when he is talking about that is, while he's saying he wants the $30 or $40 million roster, you've got to think about the context he's talking about that in, is that Penn State is one of those teams. Mm-hmm. Penn State just went out and paid Jim Knowles top defensive coordinator money. Obviously, you probably heard they've got stadium additions coming as well. I mean, that's why they're upset. Is because they put so much money into it. And on the opposite end of it, that's why they're not too worried about $49 million because they are paying to win. They're going to continue to be among the tops there. And if you are Matt Rhule and you're sitting back and you're looking at it and you're begging your current school to try to be one of those teams and you have interest from one of those teams, again, could make sense why you would be interested in going there or at least thinking it out. One thing that I've kind of thought about too, though, is job security. I think you've got that a lot more at Nebraska than you do at Penn State, simply by looking at what if Matt Rhule does here at Nebraska what James Franklin did at Penn State in 12 years. We'll build a statue. We'll love him. He's resurrected the Nebraska program. What if he does the same thing at Penn State? Clearly, it's not enough. So it is going to be interesting, but those expectations again would be dialed up and are higher with the higher roster that you're going to get. So I think all of that is very interesting. I think there are reasons that you laid out to not directly shoot it down and try to, like you said, leverage his situation. Always, contracts always going to be a part of it, and that's really the way that Nebraska can shut down these rumors. Though I've argued I would wait to see what happens. I would wait because if Nebraska goes 8-4, I don't think he's really part of the final decision for Penn State. They probably have moved on to look at somebody else, and at that point, you don't need to do that. So I mean, I think if I'm Troy Dannon, I might wait Tell the Penn State Iowa game, but especially in the Iowa game, the difference between going 10-2 and 9-3 at Nebraska against Iowa might be a big difference for Nebraska, and it might be a difference between making the playoffs or not. But if I'm Penn State, at that point, it wouldn't make as big a difference to me if I'm kind of trying to decide on if he would be my next head coach. So that's kind of what I'm tracking so far. If I'm Troy Didnt to see, because that's what everybody's kind of saying is, and as you pointed out, the best thing for your contract or potential raise to do is not shut down any room.
You make a great point. Jim Knowles is the highest paid. They're not getting their money's worth, by the way. Respectfully, Jim, the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country. Penn State's stolen from Ohio State, which is why Ohio State's so mad at them. And didn't even invite him back to the national championship parade. I mean, come on. That is just petty, man. Highest paid D coordinator in America, and you're paying your head coach $50 million, your former head coach, to not coach there anymore. The expectations there are through the roof. They were one play away from playing for a national championship last year. One play away. So when you come back to job security, and this is crazy because you talk about 8, 9, 10 wins. He's got job security here. We fired multiple 9-win coaches. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Matt Rhule at Nebraska is the beneficiary of what happened under Mike Riley and Scott Frost, and the expectations in the bar is different. And now you've got more runway. You've got a longer honeymoon, although, getting towards the end of year 3, the honeymoon phase, is not what it once was, nor should it be. I don't think Matt Rhule would want it to be, because that means people are disengaged, and he wants an engaged fan base. But I agree with you. If you start to build something here, there's more appreciation. There's more job security. Ironically, there's more job security here at Nebraska. And I think he values those things. And when he said the term, "I'm not a cyborg," that meant a lot to me. So I've had off-the-record conversations with him and little things here and there that he says. Like, there's more to, there's a deep human being behind that microphone yesterday. He is not a cyborg. They put roots here. They've got family here. I've talked about all this. I think also, I don't think because he's told me, he likes a separation from his alma mater to where he coaches. Because right now, if things don't go well, he said, you can, like he said at Big Ten Media Days, you can fire me and I'll go back to Cape Cod or whatever he said. He said he's got like a little house on the beach there or whatever. I don't remember exactly what it was. I'm paraphrasing. But he's like, I can go back home. If he goes to Penn State and it doesn't go well, it's hard to go back home. Does that make sense? Like, if it doesn't go well here, cool, I'll go back home. I think he likes the separation of his alma mater and where he's coaching. And honestly, I tried to diatribe this yesterday. I love being in Nebraska, but where we lived before, it was almost nice to have a little bit of a separation. Like, if I said something that pissed people off, I could go to the grocery store, nobody cared. Hey, you're the big guy who laughs about playing ping pong or something. Remember I said that yesterday? Mm-hmm. That was almost nice, but what Matt Rhule's talking about is on a 1,000 times bigger stage. And so there's a separation right now between his alma mater. He can go home at any point in time and where he works. Now, geographically and logistically, that could create some challenges. I don't want to say, like halfway across the country, you don't go home, you don't see people as often. But if things go well or they don't go well, there's a nice little separation there. Like, I talked about Scott Frost, Trev Alberts, Deshaun Foster. Now, had UCLA gone on to lose their next 2 games, people would have just said, oh, man, Deshaun Foster didn't work out. No, now everyone's looking at him like, are you the world's worst coach? Like, what in the world? 0-4, never led once under you this year, and we're 2-0 since. Beat a top 10 team, and then curb stop Michigan State by 25 points. Like, what? He's never going to be looked at the same there. That's hard, man. There aren't too many Jim Harbaughs that go back. I can only think of one, by the way, Jim Harbaugh, that go back home to their alma mater where they played and have a bunch of success. And don't forget, there was talk of them firing him about 2 years before he won that national title, and they restructured his contract for a pay cut. Remember that. So it wasn't all a valley full of daisies and roses and sunshine for Jim Harbaugh up there. So I think that factors into it as well. Here's what my gut tells me. My gut tells me Matt Rhule is staying at Nebraska. That is what my gut tells me. Can I be definitive? No, I cannot. I've had time to process. do a little bit of due diligence. I'm not going to pretend to 100% know the answer, but my gut tells me he's going to stay here. Part of me wonders, outside of the connection to Rhule and Penn State for obvious reasons, is he exactly what they're looking for? I don't know. I posed that as a question yesterday. From Rhule's perspective, I kind of just went through a whole bunch of reasons as to why I don't think he definitively shot down anything yesterday. From my understanding, he did in a team meeting with the team, and frankly, that's all that matters. There's still leverage out there potentially. If I'm right about this stuff, I could be wrong. But if I'm right, there's still leverage out there. Okay? But I think he just wants to have the best chance to compete with what he's building here at Nebraska, and I believe he's going to stay at Nebraska for a lot of the reasons that I just explained. That is what my gut tells me. Does that make sense? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely makes sense. And again, I mean, he went over the press conference with a lot of, and to kind of go to the players meeting, you have to. I mean, you can't just leave it out there, especially in a short week. You got to go back and tell the kids that you're going to be there. But again, there's a lot of moving parts, and so it really just kind of depends. I mean, I think if I sit back and I logically think through it, and I think specifically what he's been asking for, which is more buy-in. Literally, in the NIL department for Nebraska, like every other coach is doing. But again, that Penn State already has. I think it would be tough to turn down. I think if the moving parts work in the fashion that he gets the offer, then I think it would be just tough to turn down. And for me, I've always viewed it as if he ends up succeeding here and leaving for Penn State, how could I be upset? I mean, because that is going home. And to your point about him talking about, wanting that separation, I think there is part of that. There's a lot of truth to that. But I think it is also a good mindset to get to if you aren't currently home, right? Or if you never get offered to go home. So, I think again, to me, and I know you didn't like as we talked about this pre-meeting, but I think a lot of it depends on how Nebraska does. If Nebraska does well, they win 9 or 10 games. Again, I think you're making that decision before the Iowa game, but so in that realm, if they're in that conversation and he gets the offer, I just think it would just be too tough in my mind if I put myself in his shoes to turn down. But I think still the biggest obstacle to that is Nebraska getting to that point. I've been impressed with them, sure, but it looks like the next 6 games might be more difficult than the first 6 games.
Yeah, and I think we kind of anticipated that at the beginning of the year. UCLA, Northwestern, they were like the two were like, check them down as wins. Now we're like, whoa, right. I don't know. Now Penn State, it was like, I don't want to say check it down as a loss, but we're going to be a big dog. And yeah, all of a sudden it's like, So the second half of the season is so much more unpredictable. So here's what I'm saying. I'm saying, and I believe Matt Rhule's a good football coach. And you're right. Like if we finish 1-5 again, Penn State's not calling. You know what I mean? So you make a good point. How does this season end? We're all kind of basing everything based on where we stand right now. They do have more time to figure this out. Although I think come Thanksgiving weekend, championship weekend, the very next day after championship weekend is over, they need to be announcing a head coach. You got recruiting and transfer portal and all that stuff going on. December's insane with all that. You need answers. And they need to hire sooner than later, by the way, especially with early signing day in December. So they can only wait so long, but you make a good point. What you're saying is if he's offered, you think he'll go. Right. Okay. What I'm saying is I think he stays for either. If
offered.
I'm getting there for one of two reasons. Either A, he doesn't get offered, or B, if he does, I don't think he goes anyways. That's what my gut says. Again, I cannot speak definitively, nor will I pretend to, but I thought about it. I did a lot of recon into this yesterday, thought about it this morning, and I'm like, God, for as hard a time as I was having articulating myself while I was reacting live yesterday, I was so surprised he didn't just shoot it down. But when you think about what he probably did in that team meeting, to put their mind at ease, the last thing we need is distractions. Going into Minnesota on Friday, I was just like, this all makes so much sense. So what I'm saying is either he doesn't get offered, because even though he's a really good football coach, maybe they see him as a fit, maybe they don't. I don't know what they're thinking. Or he says no. That's what I'm saying. You're saying if he gets offered, he goes.
I would think so. I think it'd be tough to turn down.